Next, we're going to turn to a deep dive on smart transportation. So related to air quality, outdoor air quality, how can we build a better connected transportation network in California? From smart traffic lights to contactless payments and better journey information, this session will look at how we provide better public transportation. When we talk about improving mobility, it becomes complex quite quickly. Who are we optimizing the flow of travel for? The movement of people or the movement of products? How do we make our transit systems more equitable? How do we reduce cars idling and traffic to reduce emissions? And I'm sure there are many more questions that our deep dive panel will try to tackle. Dr. Jane McFarlane from UC Berkeley's Institute of Transportation Studies and Caltrans' Jillian Gillette will lead this deep dive into smart transportation and next generation systems for sustainable, livable cities using data analytics and AI. I'll turn it over to you, Jane.
All right. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We're starting a little bit early, so we're missing a panelist right now, but we'll work around it. So as mentioned, welcome to our panel discussion on smart transportation. I'm Jane McFarlane. I'm the director of the Smart Cities Research Center in the Institute of Transportation Studies here at Berkeley. And we study regional mobility using supercomputers at Lawrence Berkeley Labs. So in 2011, Marc Andreessen said, software is eating the world. And he argued that software was transforming every industry by making it possible to automate processes, make them more efficient. We all know the efficiencies of these new generation companies like Amazon, but transportation's been lagging a bit in this area. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. But urbanization is driving new approaches to transportation management, and data from sensors is more prevalent than ever before. So as a result, we're seeing an emerging ecosystem of startups that provide digital solutions to these new challenges. And what we have is a really uneven surface of technology at the moment in transportation. So our expert panel here today is assembled to address some of the real world problems that the transportation sector itself is dealing with. Much of it is a result of technology solutions finding their way into a sector that has kind of rested comfortably for years in what you might find surprisingly antiquated systems. It's not just transportation, it's a lot of different sectors, but transportation and unfortunately, some of the government systems are a little bit out of date. Any of you that were traveling the day the FAA shut the whole world down, which I was that day, will know what that does. I'll warn you now, you will only be seeing the tip of the iceberg. There's much to do given the complexities of mobility. They're extremely complicated and intertwined. And so what we have today is representatives from a variety of positions working in government and the private sector. All are dealing with the integration of new technologies, and all are looking for a diverse and creative set of new minds to help make progress. They are all entrepreneurs in their own right. We'll go from government transportation organizations who shape our mobility and our quality of life in our cities to all the way to a new exciting electric truck company so that you see the breadth of challenges in front of us. So to get us started, I'll have everyone make a short introduction of themselves and their challenges. And we'll get started with Tina from the Arizona Department of Transportation. Tina, take it away.
Alrighty, thank you, Dr. Jane. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm still recovering from not having a voice. So Tina Sammartini, I am the administrator for the Employee and Business Development Division for the Arizona Department of Transportation. I'm really excited to be here today. What does all that mean? Well, from an employee and / workforce development aspect, we provide learning solutions and opportunities for all employees. You know, you have some of the compliance, regulatory-driven type of training or the technical training, but we also provide a lot of professional leadership development, career and succession planning for all employees. And on the business development side, and I'm going to keep it simple, but we also provide learning solutions and opportunities, resources, development, resources for highway transportation related small businesses, specifically minority and women owned firms. We actually manage a DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, and on the job training program as driven from regulations from USDOT. And we also provide workforce development for minorities and women individuals seeking a career in highway construction industry. And I also serve as a volunteer I'm the vice chair for the Civil Rights Committee for the American Association of Statewide Highway and Transportation Official, for short, AASHTO, and some of you may know that. So thank you, Dr. Jane, and good to be here.
Thanks, Dina. Jillian, you want to go next?
Sure, thanks. I was trying to find my background. So I'm Jillian Gillette from the Department of Transportation in California, Caltrans. And my job is to stand up a new program called the California Integrated Mobility Program. And my job is to remove barriers between different kinds of transportation and within them, starting with transit trip planning and payments. So I'm trying to help agencies learn how to speak Google Maps and take debit and credit cards. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. All right, next up would be Carla.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. I've had 15 years of experience in smart and resilient city planning and policy, and 8 years in civic innovation, particularly on government platforms and mobile technologies. I've had lots of fellowships, including clean energy, and currently I have come off of an internship with the Urban Land Institute on these issues, being able to look at equity in transit-oriented development. And spent quite a bit of time in Asia looking at how do we have an equitable transportation system that serves all, looking at housing and transportation, particularly high-speed rail. In California, that's a big deal for us, right? Trying to actually realize a high-speed rail system, and of course, lots of light rail projects. And I've advised government agencies and public sector in 21 states in 18 different countries. So I'm really happy to be here and be able to share whatever there is to be shared and to talk about these things. And thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. All right, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you to UC Berkeley and for everyone for hosting this event. I'm very honored to join this panel. I hope you don't mind if I share a few slides here. Can you see those?
I don't.
Let's see. I always love that we're talking about technology, and I can't get even the basics of Zoom to work. It's so fun.
Now.
How about now?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Well, being on the commercial side of this, I figured I would share a couple images that would help explain a little bit about InRide for those who are not familiar with InRide. I'm Michelle Avery. I'm the Vice President of Product Strategy and Government Affairs at InRide. And we were founded in 2016 with the aim to transform shipping through digital, electric, and autonomous technology, because our mission, it really is to make the earth a better place through intelligent movement. And we're doing this because we have to. We know it's an imperative to reduce carbon in shipping, which contributes 7% to global emissions. And despite what we might be seeing in the news lately around ESG, the fact remains there is market demand. More shipping customers are setting environmental sustainability goals. And these are only going to be achieved through electric heavy-duty trucks, through autonomous electric heavy-duty trucks, and with the efficiencies that only digitalization can bring. We know that the shipping industry has to transform, and we know that the future of freight's digital. Now, at InRide, we do not sell trucks. We sell the services that enable the transition to clean shipping. We operate the largest fleet of heavy-duty electric trucks in the US and Europe. And we also provide charging infrastructure, carrier partner services. These are your drivers and your insurance and all that stuff you need to operate a business legally. Obviously, the digitalization tools. And we're also piloting a fleet of autonomous electric heavy-duty trucks in the US and also in Sweden. Now, I know you hear a lot about how it's really expensive and electric is more expensive than diesel. And that's true to some point. But the fact is that our services are cost effective and they are available today. We focus on ships that are shorter in distance, which are really best suited for electric truck range that's available today. They're highly predictable, which allows us to help with the charging infrastructure. And they're also very frequent, which means we can make money doing these things. Now, we do partner with our shipping customers to gather the data necessary to identify the best routes, the best places, the times for charging, and then we begin moving goods. The good news is that as electric truck ranges improve, so does our addressable market. And this is a win-win for everyone. More sustainable shipping, less carbon emissions. And I always like to quote Joan Baez. I'm here in Menlo Park, and she's a local in the area. And she always says that action is the antidote to despair. And sometimes I really can despair about the state of the environment. So it really means a lot to me to be doing something now to make a difference. And InRide is doing a lot. As a small plug, we are hiring. We're also looking for more shipping customers. So please do reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions. I look forward to the furthering the discussion today.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So I'll start with a couple of topics, but again, please feel free to talk amongst yourselves. This is it's the conversation that matters, not the answer. And as Michelle rightly put forward, trucks, movement of goods is a big part of the equation. We have movement of people and we have movement of goods, and that's what makes economies work in our cities here. And we need both of them. So how do we design these complex transportation systems to service both of those challenges while keeping it equitable on our way through? So let's just get started on just this uneven surface of technology that I talked about earlier. We have a digital divide across the board. We have a digital divide inside of our departments of transportation. We have a digital divide with our constituents. We have a digital divide everywhere at this moment. And the whole industry, the whole sector is transforming. We are now controlling traffic lights from the cloud. So companies that used to, just deliver a traffic signal are now having to kind of move into the next generation of how do you do multi-signal corridor control and things like that. So I think every state DOT in the country is challenged by that. And we're lucky we have some of these amazing people kind of paving the way for us. And so maybe we'll just start a little bit about that, because even Michelle with her plug there, I think the plug goes across the board here of our panels is they're looking for creative minds to help. So Tina, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the workforce development first.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's so many workforce issues within the government and public sector in general. And I mean, we cannot retain literally your traditional auto technicians. And I'm going with a very, very simple example, right? And then highway workers and those skilled labor. We still need that. And, the skilled labor is, I guess, threading very thin, right? So when it comes to keeping up with the technology within the government, we are behind. And I don't think this is news or something new. Everyone working with the government or with the public sector in general, that's something, it's a constant struggle. And sometimes you may get access to some advanced technology or a better technology, but then staff is not skilled and you don't have the adequate workforce to work that new technology or the new system. So it's kind of like a constant struggle, and you're trying to keep up. And for just a personal take on this, and something that I've talked about a lot in the recent maybe couple of years, and more so in the last few months, is that the gap in the public sector workforce in my line of sight, in that data management and specifically in the DOT, as I mentioned, because that's where my line of work is. We need more data, and we need more data to make decisions, but there is a lack of qualified staff, especially in problem solving, using the data, the lag measure and analyzing it. And we need the people with the skills. And this is another personal take on this, but they also need the passion, because the money, it's not there. We can't compete with the private sector. So we have to have those you have to have the skill, you have to have that qualification, but then to work in the private sector, me as a realist, you need to have the heart, you need to have the passion. Folks stay in with that and the passion and the heart, not because of the money. So it's that really, really hard balance to attract, retain, keep up with the world and where we're all going as a very fast moving environment across the globe, and globalization and technology and advancing that within the private sector. I think it was a challenge, is a challenge, and I hope it will not be a challenge, but I think it is right now. So that's from my perspective, and some of it is personal.
Well, Jillian, I know you're having similar challenges inside of Caltrans. You brought up a whole new organization within.
What Tina said. I guess what I would add is, having spent a lot of time as a technologist before I came to the public sector, one of the things that the private sector has done is really has become laser focused on the customer. So I think government sort of has an advantage if it realizes it, and we manage to that, which is, having empathy for the customer, really investing in talking to the customer and understanding what their real needs are. And then, making changes in our processes to be about the customer rather than about us. And I think that looking at our business processes, it doesn't cost much money. It just takes empathy, right? So one of the things that I'm trying to do at Caltrans is do my team did a little analysis, and the perfect Caltrans customer, let's say that there's a customer who wants to apply for all of our grant openings, has to drop everything that they're doing as many as 32 times a year in order to apply for our grants, which is a lot. And sometimes the grants are really small, right? So you in order to build a house, you have to go apply for the doorknob money, and then you have to apply for the windowsill money, right? That's not how people work. That's not how businesses work. So for the sake of the customer, we should consolidate grants and go out all at once and let people build their budgets. It's not that expensive, which is really hard because there's a lot of inertia in the public sector and a lot of fear of change. So it's sort of change management, frankly, is a lot of it, as well as obviously all the systems are wrong too, right? Like the folks that are graduating from college in data analytics or data science are taught on tools that are not allowed by the DOTs.
Wow.
If Microsoft doesn't make it, it's not sorry.
And I do agree. It's very interesting. So ADOT operates on a Google platform, and have been for about 4 years, I want to say. And we just had recent. I love it. I think it's just, especially with the pandemic and jumping into a remote world right away, it worked. But there's still to this day a lot of folks that said, "Oh, I want my Excel back, and I want all this." So you have that, innovation and people that want to move forward, and then you have the folks that have been around and they just want to be still doing the same thing that they did 30 years ago, right? And it's I think it's our responsibility to push that envelope to say, okay, well, let's continue, let's push, let's ask for more. And one of the things that I mentioned about better technology, and kind of identifying what the need is, getting it, and I usually ask for forgiveness before I get permission, because otherwise you don't get it. So that's how you make change. Otherwise, we're still going to be here, stuck in history. So great point, Julia. I appreciate it.
Tina, I really appreciate talking about better technology. I mean, we have that in the private sector as well. One of the things that we have in trucking is we have a shortage of drivers. Well, we have a lot of commercial driver's license holders, but it's a really terrible market. And a lot of people leave the industry. Shifting from a diesel truck to an electric truck does a bunch of different things. First off, it's an easier machine to drive. You don't have a lot of noise, well, none. And it's not as complicated because you're not shifting a lot of gears. So there's actually it's a better vehicle to drive, which actually, believe it or not, does attract a lot more women and other people into the industry where historically it hasn't. On the autonomous side, because we have human in the loop autonomy, we know that right now, the way that we're rolling out autonomy follows the same lines as we're rolling out electric vehicles, which is it's very predictable, it's frequent, it's short. And for our autonomous trucks, they're also very low speed on private roads. They're also really boring. And these are kind of the routes that nobody wants to do because it's 2 miles. You're going from a factory line over to a finished goods warehouse. You're turning around and you're doing it again and again and again. I mean, these are literally boring. And scheduling people to do them, people just don't want to. So being able to add a layer of autonomy on there eases that burden. But then we have a remote operator, which means that you take what is normally a shorter mid-haul driver and you allow them to work consistent hours in an office environment overseeing these vehicles. And it's a huge improvement of quality of life. And one of the things that we focus on InRide are those employee issues. How are we going to retain them? It's not just about money. It really is also about benefits, respect, childcare. These are things that once you start shifting some of these jobs into higher quality jobs, you can start retaining more people for longer periods of time for better workforce.
I would say that we're failing, outright failing. And that is something, being at Cal, being from Haas, we have to call a failure, right? And we have to get a new rubric. It's demanding, like we're looking at what's going on with BART and what's going on with a lot of our public transit. It's outright failing, folks. We've got lots of crime. We need to get realistic about these things. I think we're kind of holed up on some old notions. We're holding on to old tech. Even the new tech is not new tech. Things that we're having issues with is like, we have a DEI problem. We don't have the best of the best, in these positions because the things that we've looked at as solutions. I know I've come to different, at Cal and at Citrus with different things and you just can't get it through because there's like this idea of always looking at scale and tech. It's really about implementation and governance and finance to be able to do these things and get them implemented, and really looking at the best of the best. So Asia's got us whooped. And when you look at things in China and other places, it's just amazing. But we, tend to not look at those examples. We don't look at the governance and finance. We have a lot of excuses, the reasons why we can't see the best. we don't look at complexity. We tend to, really look at like data and talk about evidence-based, but our data is completely wrong. We're collecting the wrong data. We're not even talking to the people that actually are the real users of the data because they don't pay for it. It's asking the right kind of questions and really, solving problems for real people. These are the challenges when I work with governments here and around the world. Even in the Bay Area, you have various different types of complex governmental systems. So when you adopt something like, here in San Francisco, we have autonomous vehicles, right? And you have them on the road. There's various different jurisdictions and where they can be parked and all of these kind of issues that you have to work through. Then you're talking about solving the problem for people with disabilities, folks, of color that have been traditionally redlined or having issues. So, and then you're looking at, okay, well, then even after you get through some of those issues, we've talked about it, but in government, you have various types of generations and generations of folks that want to use, what does their skill level have to come up to? How long is that going to be paid? We like to do a lot of pilots. A lot of free pilots that we really didn't look at the life cycle of the technology and how often now we're getting millisecond reporting back on data. So when it's failing, but you might not have the budget to be able to address that. So there's a lot of complexity around, technology, but the issues are we in America do not research, how other folks are doing it. We really have a bias on Asia that really prevents us from really understanding and collaborating more. And we don't have folks, the folks that make up America on our research teams. Being there to be able to ask the questions that aren't necessarily technical, but they're very needed to be able to implement this technology and to be able to see it through.
Yeah, I wonder, do we suffer from a lot of siloed thinking? Where this transportation is such a complex system of systems, you really need top-down systems thinking. And we tend to run into specific solutions. We've got a huge amount of money going out for personal EVs and transit and trucks. Charging infrastructure, I think, is maybe getting left behind a little bit. And, maybe it's time for public-private partnerships to come about to help move those ideas forward with the emphasis of the private part, bringing it to the people. Certainly transit, as we know, Jillian, you may have some commentary about that, given your challenges with GTFS and also since the pandemic, transit is kind of in trouble, so to speak. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, sure. It's a huge subject, but a little bit. So, transit was declining before the pandemic, right? Even in, California, we were making massive investments for a lower and lower return. On the California, we had a 6% mode share, right? And in Southern California, I think it was 5%. And, some of the transit agencies are only at 40% of where they were before. So transit is pretty much on its last legs, which is a real problem because the geometry of California doesn't support not having transit. We need ways to move people around all at once. It's just got to work. But, the way it's been run as a social service, right? Buses come with a cash fare box because that's what Black people pay with. Right? That's how we run transit in America. Transit works really well. It's a good thing. To Carla's point, perhaps we should be emulating our peers who've been running high quality transit for some time. And that takes it takes partnerships. I agree. That's what I do in my program is I bring the public and private sector together. So willing transit agencies, I connect them with the payments industry and technology vendors so that we can help the transit agencies move onto the bank rails to do something simple, which is just to accept, bank cards, which is not possible in most of the United States. So there's an endless, well, there's not endless, there's some very, very basic social safety net problems in America that really drive a lot of the problems in transportation. And I think we need to be honest and attack them. And I think also need to look at the elephant in the room, which is land use. You can only do so much with transit or transportation in the first place. Like people in the Bay Area where I live, I feel they qualify. We have people who are going all the way to the end of the BART lines, and then they get on a bus and they still have to pay cash, on a bus line to get home, right? We do not build enough housing. So it's just endlessly complicated. I'm optimistic about it, which is, I work in government, you kind of have to be optimistic, but we got a lot ahead of us.
We've got some real folks that are doing amazing work. I just want to uplift the work of Stephanie Wiggins and down in Los Angeles at LA Metro and the team. There's so much innovation. When they implemented during COVID, micro transit in Los Angeles, amazing. I happen to hail from Los Angeles and have been so amazed by LA Metro. They took on micro transit. They took on getting their tap card and being able to really think through those design challenges of, looking at people that were unbanked, underwired, where they could go, how they could be able to make that transition equitably. The question is having the right team. They have a diverse team that's very, that looks at human-centered design as well as have the lived experience. And when they were able to bring these technologies to the forefront and launch them, they did so with looking at an equity lens. LA Metro also has, they also have a budget for equity. And that makes a big deal because they had thought through the governance and finance challenges. So then when they undertook the TAP card, which is the transportation card, they had already been able to pay for those issues of onboarding, onboarding people that English was not their first language, that the folks that would have a disability in their micro transit. So all of their vehicles were already retrofitted, and those kind of expenses were already put into those budgets. And so that is a difference in what we're talking about in becoming a smart city and an equitable city. And then looking at, okay, what are these challenges that the user is going to have? I think that when we get so caught up in technology and scale, even in a VC pitch, we're talking about, scaling, and we're talking about the money we need for today and not the life cycle that includes equity as the framework. And when you do that, then we're able to not only have a better, a better rollout. And I'll highlight the work that where I've learned a lot of this stuff is Singapore with their smart nations in governmental technology. And you see this, when governments do this correctly, and they have folks on board, on their staff that has a lived experience, that they work with folks with disabilities, senior citizens. It's not the 15-minute city now. It's the smart centenarian city, where you think about these things and then therefore they don't come back to bite us later. And that's kind of in California. We have a lot of come back to bite you later because we didn't think about the different types of people that would be taking our transportation. And crime is something that we're going to have to be looking at because it's not just walking and biking. It's the experience that, we do have a lot of crime. We have a lot of homeless, and there's technology features that we have to build into our products so that these experiences on board our transit. And I would argue that transit isn't over. it just needs a rethink. It probably needs some new leadership. And we need people similar to what's going on with Los Angeles Metro.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't seeing in the Q&A for some reason. So I apologize for the people in the audience. I will say though that, Carla, while I agree with you that, transportation is contextual. And what works in one city doesn't work in another city. Managing traffic depends on the network constraints and things like that. I think there's no question that transit has to survive. We have an opportunity to rethink it now. And so I think, and Jillian is in the midst of doing that by, finding different ways for payments and the like. I will say that I have been at way too many conferences where people talk about apps, and a lot of people don't have smartphones. So we really need to rethink, how we think about things, what that digital divide really is, because we tend to think everybody is there. We're not there yet. There's all kinds of communities across this country that are not connected by technology and not connected by language. So we have a lot of work to do. Unfortunately, we, as I said, have just touched the tip of the iceberg in this discussion because of the complexity. So I am getting the 1 minute left signal, which is unfortunate because I think we just got started. But I hope what the audience takes away is that they are very exciting times right now with a ton of opportunity, providing opportunity for entrepreneurs, data scientists. As you can see, you can be an entrepreneur in government. You can see Tina and Jillian here. They're paving new paths inside of government. Carla and Michelle are working to support governments and make things work on the outside. They need your help and creative ideas. And we are very, very lucky to have them all working for us because they are building our next generation cities. So thank you for your attention today. And thank you to these amazing panelists and having the opportunity to join this conference, Jill. So unfortunately, I have to bring it to an end. I think we have 10 more of these in us right now. So I hope I see you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for moderating, Jane. And thank you for our expert panel. It was really a stimulating discussion. And it seems like as with all these panels, you get really the conversation flowing and lots of questions back and forth right at the end. So feel free to go ahead and answer any of the questions in the Q&A if you would like to. We'll have that still open if you'd like to respond. And for those in the audience who want to reach out to the panelists, I think many of them would welcome connections on LinkedIn or other ways that you might like to try to contact them and get engaged. So thanks again to the terrific panel.